If someone piped up in my comments and asked me, "Hey Dylan, what are your favorite cars?" Well, I'd tell them that there's three. I love the 1962 Buick Riviera, the Dodge Daytona Hemi, and the Honda City Turbo. My love of the City Turbo specifically means that I've got a bit of a soft spot for G1 Skids and all of the characters that he subsequently shares a mold with. Now, Skids had a bit of a weird resurgence a bit ago, getting his very own masterpiece figure and a sweet new mold in the Generations mainline that is pretty directly based on his G1 Honda City Turbo alt mode appearance. Now, for whatever reason, that Legacy Skids just... I can't pin it down, but something about it just didn't work for me. But all of a sudden, it got repainted into a all black and red Diaclone version, and it left me drooling, looking like goddamn Nemesis Skids over here. So I went out and snatched one, and now today we have a Generations Burnout standing in front of us. So who is Burnout? Well, Burnout was released in the Walmart exclusive Velocitron Speedia 500 subline, which in fiction was about the great Speedia 500, a race whose winner becomes the next leader of the planet of Velocitron. But as a toy line, it was just an excuse to fart some repaints onto shelves that might not have meshed super well into the main line. So that's where the Generations release of Burnout comes from, but I still haven't answered the question of who they are. Well, to answer that, let's go back and retread a little bit of history here. If you're versed in this hobby, you've heard this story 100 times already. The first 1984 G1 Transformers were actually just a great big rebranding of several transforming robot toy lines that were brought over from Japan to America. One of the most prominent being a toy line called Diaclone. A large pool of Diaclone toys were given new color schemes, given identities and character names, and then marketed as the one and only Transformers. Back to modern times now, every now and again Hasbro likes to homage its Diaclone heritage by taking a current mold and recoloring it back to its classic Diaclone colors. That's been a huge thing in the Generation Selects line as of late, but that's what our friend Burnout here is. She is the Diaclone colors version of what became Skids. Also a little fun fact, in its own fiction, the Diaclone bots weren't sentient robots, they were piloted mecha, so Burnout is technically the name of this car's pilot. This was shown more directly in the Speedia 500 comic. Kinda neat. Okay, so we know what subline she comes from, and we now also know what the significance of her black and red color scheme is. Lore is great and all, but a good Transformers toy, lore alone does not make. Let's get this show on the road and take a good look at this Diaclone dudette. What an absolute lunchbox this car is. As previously stated, Burnout here turns into a Honda City Turbo-ish car. There's some distinct differences to make it look more visually ambiguous, that way Hasbro doesn't need to pay Honda a licensing fee for the original car. This isn't new for Generations. Most Generations mainline bots, who are based on a real-world car, will have some distinct differences as to be their own thing. Licensed cars tend to be reserved for things like Masterpiece and Studio Series bots. Burnout's alt mode, though, is sporting a ton of City Turbo-esque details. It's definitely a two-door hatchback. It's got that distinct little hood scoop, and hey, check it out, we even get a sunroof. But the subtle details that would really make it a proper City Turbo aren't here. The hood is much too sharp. Hell, the entire front end has been completely redesigned, and the whole car is lacking on that slight taper that the sides of the OG car had. It's a bit too square when you look at it head on. On its own merits though, it's a pretty cute little box car. Burnout actually gets one over on the original Skids colorway of this mold by having fully painted tail lights. We love to see it. The tires are acceptable. I'm not a fan of mixing the pinned rear tires and the clip-on front tires. Doubly so since none of them are sporting any painted rims. But when they're cast entirely in this grayish black, it feels a bit less egregious. What you see is what you get here for this car mode. There's no extra features, no proper weapon storage. Burnout has a trio of weapon ports in this mold, one on top and one on each side. And I suppose you could call this weapon storage if you wanted to entirely ruin the aesthetics of the alt mode. But the ports do make for some fun if you want to bash on some other 5mm compatible weapons. Last thing that I want to touch on in the alt mode is that the hatchback doesn't do anything. That might seem like a weird thing to point out. It's really rare that you get opening like hoods and hatches on something like a Generations Deluxe. Burnout is actually doing better than most in this department by having opening doors, even if there isn't an interior to lead into. But staying on topic here, there is nothing at the boot. The reason this bugs me is because one of the most iconic features of the Honda City Turbo was its inclusion of the most incredible pocket-sized motorcycle ever conceived, the Moto Compo. The City Turbo and the Moto Compo are inseparable. The trunk of the City Turbo was specifically designed to house a Moto Compo with like a designated pocket and straps. The Moto Compo, I think, is one of the best parts of the City Turbo, so it's a real shame to see no proper representation here. Maybe I'm asking too much, but I would have loved to see some kind of Moto Compo accessory with some storage, maybe one that turned into like a little blaster? Okay, actually on that note, let's take a look at the accessories that Burnout comes with. Burnout comes with both of the classic guns that the City Turbo mold tends to come with. This little shit pistol and the always strange dual blaster. Pretty basic. But she also comes with this weird Energon axe thing with a barrel on one side that can only comfortably be held from the side. The idea here is that you're supposed to bash together all of the weapons that come with all of your legacy bots to make a big, crazy super gun and mega sword, and unfortunately that idea was really underbaked in the legacy line, and the result is this accessory feels kind of worthless. Again, ditch this axe and her weird ugly blaster and give me a Moto Compo blaster, that'd be wonderful. Hey everybody, editor Dylan here. So while working on this video, I discovered that there is a third-party company who actually makes a Moto Compo blaster for Legacy Burnout and Skids. I don't think it has any proper weapon storage. There's like a pocket in the back by the legs that it might be able to mush into, but I don't think it's got storage. But they're still super lovely and super cute, and I need 50 of them, so there you go. They do exist, turns out. Yeah. All in, Burnout's pack-ins are a bit of a wash. So it goes. Let's get her transformed up and see if we can't make up for some of that lost ground in the robot mode. Burnout's transformation is pretty basic for a car former, but that's not to say that it's bad. The transformation is actually pretty great. It does lots to move mass around in really effective ways. I like how the head meshes into the hood, like you wouldn't even know it's there, and the hole gets filled by the torso inside. The arms are pretty snug underneath the car, and actually have some dedicated tabs to hang out under there. It keeps the front tires aligned in car mode super well. The torso has a 90-degree bend in the middle to compress into the car mode, so that's kind of fun to fold out too. There's a lot of limbs and body smushed into this little cube mobile. Fold the tires into the feet, orient the door and roof panels, and there she is, a blocky car bot who's got some pretty decent proportions considering the car that she just folded out of. With her hood chest and wing doors, Burnout strikes a pretty standard car bot shape. But the harsh, blocky nature of the City Turbo mode leaves Burnout with a very distinctly shaped robot silhouette, even if it is retreading some familiar design tropes from other deluxe car bots. Before we look at the finer details here, I just want to establish how much I love how this robot mode cleans up. I love how while I'm looking at it, I can see where all the parts of the car wound up, but at the same time we have pretty minimal kibble. The wing doors look wonderful, they sit at the perfect height, and the roof panel tucks up against the back pretty clean too. I'm not wanting like more folding joints for it to clean up even more, it looks totally fine. It's also accurate to all versions of Skids and his repaints, like check it out, even the Masterpiece version has its big roof panel back there, and that thing is like about 4 times the price. Alright, tip to tail now, let's go. Burnout's got some big-ass, red, clown shoe feet, which should feel out of place, but the red has been evenly sprinkled over this whole figure, so they blend in with the style great. The sides and backs of the calves are the car backs, which I think look wonderful, but they do eat up all of the paint budget here. There is 0 paint on the feet, shins, and thighs. I'm always down for picking out extra detail, but with the black, red, and gray color breakup here, I think the legs are actually doing pretty okay without the extra paint work. One thing that I was really worried about were these huge, hollow, weird knee calf pockets inside of the legs. They're pretty bad, and I really wish that they were covered up. Usually stuff like this exists because parts have to fold away into the hollow pocket, but on Burnout, they're just big ol' lazy holes that never got filled. Here's the thing though, they're not nearly as bad as I anticipated. Maybe it's the all-black color scheme doing some masking work here, but in hand, I don't know, I just don't really notice them. I'm not posing Burnout and feel like they're stealing my attention. On the topic of posing, the legs have some 90-degree knees, we got super deep ankles, and universal hips, some great articulation in the leg region. The torso was another section that I was worried might feel hollow, and doesn't. It's filled in pretty decently from the back and side angles, and it's a hell of a statement piece. Here's a weird little detail. You see those 2 little red, what might be signal lights hanging out there? Well, if you look at the bumper from the back, it turns out that this piece is entirely cast in red plastic, the same stuff that makes up the feet and crotch, and is painted gray. I don't know why it wasn't just cast gray and had those 2 little red spots picked out with paint, but I also don't totally understand how mold casting goes for Transformers toys. I'd be curious to know why it happened this way on the production side of things. I'm just happy that the front of the car, the biggest visual draw in both modes, got most of the paint detail. The shoulders also get some paint detail up top, that is another point over on the Skids version, and the rest of the arms are pretty standard. They've got some 5mm weapon ports on the tops of the forearms, which is a departure from the typical side mounting of those ports that we've seen on most bots. That change is for the worse. There isn't much you can put on top of the arms that don't clash into everything. Like, we already got a top-mounted hole with the fists, so the second port here is unfortunately a little bit worthless. The fists, though, do have wrist movement. Elbows hit a 90, we get some universal shoulders with an extra point of articulation up top here, thanks to the transformation joints. Burnout can really shrug up a storm if she needs to.
Hey Burnout, do you have any idea who the spawn of a glitch is who busted my rifle?
And lastly, Burnout's mug. It is a well-sculpted, warrior plate-mouthed helmet, whose pointy ears kinda get lost in the backplate mush that's required to have the head blend into the hood in car mode. I really like that the eyes are picked out in a yellow, which matches the car headlights. It's a fun touch. Once again, I really like Burnout's robot mode. The articulation isn't hindered by her big blocky shapes, all the joints feel super tight and solid. She is a very, very good figure in robot mode. From the Honda City-esque alt mode to her very organized robot mode, Burnout is a wonderful bot, but I can't help but feel like something's missing. Maybe it's those incredibly unsatisfying accessories she came with, but I feel like she needs something to interact with. Imagine like a silly little tent trailer that folded out into a hammer and a riot shield. Or again, some form of moto compo to go with the car. Or ooh, hell, imagine like a little motorcycle trailer with a small bike in it that unraveled into a turret emplacement. I've got a huge box of accessory leftovers from my collection, but I still struggle to find something that makes Burnout feel totally complete. Maybe I gotta invest in the perfect weaponizer. We'll see. But even on her own, Burnout is still a wonderful bot. I would gladly recommend any version of the Skids Generations mold. Lord knows that there is a few of them to pick from at this point. And even if it's not a perfect Honda City Turbo with all of the accessories that I dream of having with it, Burnout is a bot who's sorta shaped like one of my favorite cars and has stuck into my collection as sorta one of my favorite bots. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Romp, everybody. We will catch you next week.